the most horrific thing that happened at boarding school. My parents sent me to what they called finishing school when I turned 16, but the first lesson was learning to pleasure men because a woman's highest calling is serving male needs. My parents had always been obsessed with status and wealth, and they dragged me to finishing school kicking and screaming. I was against it even when I believed them that it was just where I'd learn to attract a wealthy man, but I had no idea how bad it was really going to be. The first day there, I met the headmistress, Mrs. Rose, who seemed nice enough for about 5 minutes. Then her secretary brought her decaf when she asked for regular, and she slapped her across the face, then turned to me and explained, "That's how women need to learn to listen." On the first day of classes, Mrs. Rose sat us down in what she called Introduction to Feminine Arts, and explained that our primary purpose was to learn how to please and satisfy men in every possible way. She said modern women had forgotten their true calling, and that this school existed to teach us the ancient arts of seduction, submission, and service. Mrs. Rose told us that wealthy, powerful men were willing to pay enormous sums for the company of properly trained women. She looked directly at me and said, "You're not students, you're inventory, and our clients have very expensive tastes." Every day was another nightmare. We had classes with names like advanced companionship and client satisfaction techniques. The younger girls like me had to practice on each other first, learning to massage and touch in ways that made my skin crawl. I had to pleasure so many girls in my grade because I hadn't earned the right to be with men yet. Not that that sounded any better. Mrs. Rose would walk around adjusting our hands and bodies, telling us we were too tense and needed to embrace our inner service animal. The older girls who had earned men would return from their practicum sessions looking exhausted and hollow-eyed, and I started to understand that this wasn't just theoretical training. We were being put to work. Girls who had been there for over a year were regularly taken off campus to client meetings that lasted entire weekends. The truly horrifying part was how she broke down our resistance gradually. She'd make us practice saying degrading things about ourselves in mirrors, telling us we needed to accept our role and stop fighting our nature. When I resisted and locked me in a windowless room with no food until I complied. When she finally let me out, she smiled sweetly while explaining that wealthy men didn't want difficult women. "And without a man, you're garbage," she said. "What other skills do you have? You're not pretty, you're not smart, you're not talented. All you know is how to get on your knees." I couldn't accept that this was supposed to be my life. I was 16 years old and had dreams of going to college, becoming a therapist, maybe falling in love with someone I actually chose. I started secretly calling my parents, begging them to let me come home. When I told them what the school was really teaching us, they accused me of being dramatic and ungrateful. Then we found out that one of the older girls had tried to escape and was found dead in the nearby woods. Mrs. Rose told us it was a tragic accident, but the girl's roommate whispered to me that she'd been planning to cooperate with the police. That's when I knew I had to get out immediately. I managed to contact a teacher from my old high school who agreed to help me, and we planned for her to pick me up during our weekly town trip. For the first time in months, I had hope. I was going to get out, and I was going to do everything in my power to free every other girl this school was keeping prisoner. But it turned out Mrs. Rose was tapping the phone lines, so she knew all about my plan. The night before I was going to escape, she came to my dormitory with 2 security guards and told me that since I was so determined to leave, I could start my career immediately with a particularly demanding client who specialized in difficult girls. Mrs. Rose said, "You think you're too good for this life, but you're about to learn exactly what happens to girls who don't appreciate what they've been given." The guards dragged me to a car. As we drove through the dark countryside toward town, I knew this was my last chance. I lurched from the back seat and grabbed the steering wheel and yanked it hard to the right. The car went off the road and slammed into a tree. Mrs. Rose was knocked unconscious, and I managed to crawl out through the shattered window. I ran to the nearest house and pounded on the door until the owners called the police. When the police arrived at the crash scene, they found Mrs. Rose's briefcase full of client lists, payment records, and photographs of girls with wealthy men. The evidence was overwhelming, and they raided the school the next morning and found evidence of a sophisticated trafficking operation that had been running for decades. Mrs. Rose was arrested along with several staff members, and dozens of girls were rescued. Now I work as a counselor for trafficking survivors.